Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Russ. It was where one of the first chapters of Billings history was written, and now the public gets its chance to weigh in on the future of Coulson Park.
But will upgrading this historic place be a walk in the park or a rocky road? That question, the topic of discussion tonight.
Some groups in Billings have been looking at the possibilities of turning Coulson Park into something special. Tonight, the public had its first chance to comment on some of those ideas.
Q2's David J. was at the presentation and joins us now with some of those ideas. David.
Well, Jeanelle, Russ, those working on the planning say Coulson Park is at a unique location with the Yellowstone River and being close to Interstate 90. Tonight's meeting gave the public a chance to see what has been done in other cities and what can be done here. The Parks Department has been working with Big Sky Economic Development, DHM Design, and several other groups. An amphitheater has been one of the ideas. The ideas are just for the 50 acres of Coulson Park and do not include the old Corrette plant land. Discussion has been about how Coulson fits into the Billings park system, transportation, and ecology.
Pretty amazing. I mean, 50-acre park right on the Yellowstone River with the Sacrifice Cliffs there. I mean, it's a real compelling site. Our hope is to really transform that into kind of a special place that's activated, feels safe, and really provides a great asset for the community.
Eric Meadows says the plan is to get the draft done this summer and have a completed master plan ready in October. Russ, Jeanelle?
All right, thank you, David.
Montana Governor Steve Bullock will not make the primetime stage later this month for the first presidential debate.
Today, the Democratic National Committee announced the 20 candidates who will share the debate stage later this month, and Governor Bullock is among 4 candidates who failed to make the grade. To qualify for the first debate, candidates had to either collect contributions from at least 65,000 unique donors or notch at least 1% support in 3 polls.
Although the Bullock campaign maintains the governor did achieve the required support in 3 separate polls, the DNC denied his petition. That decision is not sitting well with the Bullock campaign.
In an interview with Fortune magazine, Bullock said, quote, "Keeping me from the first debate shows we haven't learned our lesson from 2016. And that might squander our chances in 2020.
The governor's campaign continues to tout the fact that Bullock is the only candidate in the field who won a Trump state and has passed major legislation with a Republican-controlled legislature.
Former Vice President Joe Biden, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren topped the list of frontrunners who did make the cut.
Now, the first debate will split over 2 nights on June 26th and 27th and will be broadcast on MSNBC, Telemundo, and NBC stations nationwide.
After leaving Billings early this morning, the vice president touched down in Yellowstone to take in some sights and take on the topic of deteriorating infrastructure. Along with Interior Secretary David Bernhardt, Vice President Pence and Bernhardt discussed the hundreds of miles of roads, backcountry campsites, bridges, tunnels, and other infrastructure. Bernhardt says across the National Park Service there are more than $12 million in backlog in infrastructure maintenance. Yellowstone National Park makes up $500 million of that backlog. And now a new proposal known as the Public Lands Infrastructure Fund would dedicate 50% from all the revenues from all leases on public lands to improve and maintain national park infrastructure.
We believe that the combination of investments that we're making is exactly the right level. But the historic investment that we will be making in maintenance by literally creating a funding stream for maintenance from our public leases, we believe will more than meet the maintenance obligations of our national parks.
When asked about budget cuts to the interior, the vice president said this infrastructure proposal will be a solution. Pence says the Public Lands Infrastructure Fund has broad support from both sides.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders will leave her job as White House press secretary at the end of June. President Trump announced the news on Twitter today, thanking her for 3.5 years on the job. The departure caps a tumultuous tenure as the president's chief spokeswoman, during which she largely redefined the job. Trump said she will return to her home state of Arkansas, and he floated the possibility she may run for governor. Her father, Mike Huckabee, served as governor of Arkansas for a decade. Also today, Wyoming's Governor Mark Gordon joined President Trump's Secretary of Labor Alexander Acosta and 7 other governors at the White House. They all took part in a roundtable discussion that touched on a wide range of workforce-related topics. The bipartisan group of governors highlighted federal and state efforts to reduce barriers and expand economic mobility for America's workers. Governor Gordon highlighted the newly created Wyoming Works program, which helps expand technical and trade programs at Wyoming's community colleges and also provides grants for students.
A week after the 100th anniversary of women gaining the right to vote in the United States, Senator John Tester took time on the Senate floor to remember a famous Montanan who helped make women's suffrage happen. Congresswoman Jeanette Rankin.
Jeanette Rankin, who helped women in Montana and Washington earn the right to vote in 1914, 3 years before she became the first woman elected to Congress, and 5 years before she helped pass the 19th Amendment, making her the only woman to vote for nationwide women's suffrage.
Rankin, a Republican, was elected to Congress twice, the first time in 1916 and the second time in 1940. She was also known for her pacifism and was the only member of Congress to vote against the U.S. entering World War II.
And turning to weather, those storms rolling through knocked out power in parts of Billings, even impacting some businesses around town tonight, Bob.
Yeah, kind of an active night.
Check out this shot here. This is from Yellowstone Avenue in Billings, where that storm managed to split this tree in two.
Oh.
And Bob, what else can you tell us about that storm?
Well, we had some other hail, large hail moving into the area. Here's the storm reports, as you can see. We had half-inch size hail reported at Pompey's Pillar and at Hysham. We had flooding over at Harleton, a quarter-inch size hail at Columbus. Had heavy rain over at Gardner, about 1 inch of rain there as well. And of course, we had thunderstorm winds 55 to 58 miles per hour in Laurel and in the Billings area. Now, we thought we'd talk about what causes the hail to form. Well, it actually starts with a raindrop, and then what happens is the updrafts take that raindrop above the freezing line, and what happens is then we start to see little layers of ice develop on that raindrop. Each time it kind of completes the cycle. Eventually, the raindrop or hailstone gets so heavy it actually outweighs the updraft and actually starts falling back down to the earth, and that is basically how hail forms. Just a lot of repeated motion, up and down, up and down. Our forecast and temperature is going to be up and down for the next several days. We'll chat about it in a few more minutes.
All right, thanks so much, Bob. Well, this month, Help Flight celebrates its 40th anniversary, 4 decades of taking to the skies to help Montanans in need. Q2's Samantha Sullivan spoke with the current flight team about the mission.
High up in the skies above Yellowstone County, a team of paramedics gets to work.
With an ambulance background, I'm used to smaller spaces. However, this is smaller. We're used to bumpy environments. This is bumpier. In an ambulance, you can stand up and you can move around appropriately. You can't do that in the aircraft, so everything is done sitting.
They're part of the Help Flight team, an air ambulance service run out of St. Vincent Hospital.
The standard answer that you always hear when you get asked that question is, I'm doing it to help people. And this job affords me a really unique opportunity to be able to do that, where I'm autonomous with my partner to be able to deliver care when people really need it and at very critical times.
Providing life-saving care while in a relatively small helicopter or plane may not be everyone's first choice, but for Whitney Jacobs, there was never another option.
When I was 5, Help Flight came out and did a show and tell at my grade school, and the paramedic put me in. I got picked as the little girl that got to get in the aircraft, and I decided that day I wanted to be a paramedic. So with that experience, I set out all through high school looking to become a paramedic, specifically to fly for St. Vincent's Help Flight.
Growing up in rural Montana herself, Whitney saw the impact Help Flight had on the area's small ranching communities firsthand. For her, it was the best of both worlds.
It could be me, it could be my mother, it could be my father. What might not seem like a huge medical disaster to us, when you're rural, it is. And so it's a pretty neat privilege to get to help or go out and rescue, so to speak, these individuals that may have to wait hours for any sort of medical care.
Now she, along with her colleagues, are part of the program's 40-year history, a legacy of safety and care. In Billings, Samantha Sullivan, MTN News.
Thanks, Sammy. Now, a community celebration will be held at Dealer Park this Saturday from 8 to 11 a.m. The flight team may just inspire the next generation of flight paramedics.
Well, the Montana Hope Project has a goal of making dreams come true for critically ill children.
Troopers came together to grant another wish for the Montana Hope Project tonight. 7-year-old Jaden Schmidt has a brain tumor. The Hope Project will send him and his family to Disney World in Orlando, Florida.
Now, his family says he enjoys swimming and playing in the water. The Schmidts appreciate the support from the troopers.
It just makes the family all joy that there's people out there who care for Jaden, and as much as we do, and are willing to help and afford things like we can. It's really helpful.
I'm looking forward to Jaden having fun. I'm looking forward to him saying, like, having laughter and joy.
My troopers really love to do this. It's all wonderful. So the biggest thing about it for me is the families get a no pressure week, which to them is absolutely amazing.
Well, the Montana Hope Project has granted 475 wishes since 1984.
Good stuff. Coming up on tonight's 10 o'clock news, it's major surgery with minimal invasion. We'll check out how technology continues to help save lives and help people get back to living theirs.
And later in sports, on the eve of their season opener, the Mustangs announce a managerial change. Scott will tell you who the new skipper will be.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.